Big tech CEOs are testifying before the Senate right now, and it is currently ongoing, but there's a specific part with Ted Cruz and Jack Dorsey where Ted Cruz absolutely destroys Jack Dorsey, and it's a beautiful thing to witness. I've never been the biggest fan of Ted Cruz historically, but recently in the last several months, it's almost like that scene with Paul Rudd in The 40-Year-Old Virgin. I've been looking at Ted Cruz like, man, I always thought Ted Cruz was a Streisand, but he's rocking the shit in this one, and that's kind of how I feel about him. It's like he's killing it lately, and I love it. But we're going to focus in on a couple of points here. I may do a few jump cuts because there's a few points I want to hear Ted Cruz make, and then we'll talk about it. So enjoy right here.
Mr. Dorsey, I want to focus primarily on Twitter and ask you initially, is Twitter a publisher?
Is Twitter a publisher?
Yes.
No, we are not. We distribute information.
So what is a publisher?
An entity that is publishing under editorial guidelines and decisions.
Well, your answer happens to be contrary to the text of federal statute, particular section 230, which defines an information content provider as any person or entity that is responsible in whole or in part for the creation or development of information provided through the internet or any other interactive computer service. Let me ask you, was Twitter being a publisher when it censored the New York Post?
No, we have very clear policies on the conduct we enable on the platform. And if there's a violation, we take an enforcement action, and people choose to commit to those policies and to those terms of service.
Except your policies are applied in a partisan and selective manner. You claim it was hacked materials, and yet you didn't block the distribution of the New York Times story that alleged to talk about President Trump's tax returns, even though a federal statute makes it a crime to distribute someone's tax returns without their consent. You didn't block any of that discussion, did you?
See, that's the problem. Like, they want to claim, they always fall back on these rules, but the rules only apply to one side of the equation. They don't apply to the other side. And you claim you're not a publisher, yet you consistently act as a publisher. That is the problem here. It's not the problem of, oh, Twitter is this. Twitter presents themselves in one way and acts in a complete other way.
Our policy was focused on distribution of the actual hacked materials.
Did you block the discussion of the president's tax return material?
And in the New York Times case, we interpret it as reporting about the hacked materials.
Did you block Edward Snowden?
We interpreted, but that they can just dance around things all day long.
Released material?
I don't have the answer to that.
The answer is no. You haven't used this in a selective manner. Let me ask you, were you being a publisher when you forced Politico, another journalistic outlet, to take down their tweets on a topic that you had deemed impermissible?
No. We were enforcing our policy and our terms of service.
So on October 15th, Jake Sherman, a reporter at Politico, tweeted the following. I tweeted a link to the New York Post story right after it dropped yesterday morning. I immediately reached out to the Biden campaign to see if they had any answer. I wish I'd given the story a closer read before tweeting it. Twitter suspended me. So you actually have a reporter reporting on a story, asking the other side for comment, and Twitter says, hi, Jake Sherman, your account at Jake Sherman has been locked for violating Twitter rules. Now, what did the Politico reporter do? Immediately tweets after that, my goal was not to spread information. Well, that's a little worrisome just in and of itself. My goal was to raise questions about the story. Oh, my overlords in Silicon Valley, I was attacking the New York Post. You don't understand, I was attacking them, as I did in subsequent tweets, and see how the Biden campaign was going to respond. They later did respond. And then, not long after, Jake Sherman comes back with, my account is clearly no longer suspended. I deleted the tweet. When Twitter is editing.
See, that's how it goes. You put something out there, they lock your account, and in order for you to get your account access back, they force you to delete what they don't want. It's a publisher.
and censoring and silencing the New York Post, the newspaper with the fourth highest circulation in the country, and Politico, one of the leading newspapers in the country. Is Twitter behaving as a publisher when it's deciding what stories reporters are allowed to write and publish and what stories they're not?
No, and that account was not suspended. It fell afoul of the hacked materials policy. We realized that there was an error in that policy and the enforcement.
Hold on, I'm literally
24
looking at
hours.
the tweet from Twitter that says your account has been locked. You're telling me that this is not an accurate...
That's a lock and can be unlocked when you delete the...
I understand that you have the star chamber power. Your answer is always, well, once we silence you, we can choose to allow you to speak.
Yes!
But you are engaged in publishing decisions. Let me shift to a different topic, Mr.
It's so accurate, and I love it. Once we silence you, we will choose to allow you to speak again. That is a publisher decision.
Dorsey, does voter fraud exist?
I don't know for certain.
You don't know for certain? Are you Jack, you're pathetic. Absolutely pathetic.
Are you an expert in voter fraud?
No, I'm not.
Well, why then is Twitter right now putting purported warnings on virtually any statement about voter fraud?
We're simply linking to a broader conversation so that people have more information.
No, you're not. You put up a page that says, quote, voter fraud of any kind is exceedingly rare in the United States. That's not linking to a broader conversation. That's taking a disputed policy position, and you're a publisher when you're doing that. You're entitled to take a policy position, but you don't get to pretend you're not a publisher and get a special benefit under Section 230 as a result.
Thank you. Thank you, Ted Cruz. This is the entire premise of the problem with the Twitter, that they are presenting themselves as something they are not in order to skirt around rules. This is the problem right here. And Ted Cruz is pressing Jack Dorsey, as he absolutely should.
That link is pointing to a broader conversation with tweets from publishers and people all around the country.
Yet they never added any big, broader conversation links when President Trump is always being accused by the Democrats of never denouncing white supremacy. When Joe Biden sits there and says on video that he never denounced white supremacy, yet there is 12 or 15 or 20 instances where he literally has, and Twitter never added any of those dispute claims to add to a broader conversation because they are in bed with the left wing and the Democrats.
Mr. Dorsey, would the following statement violate Twitter's policies? Quote, absentee ballots remain the largest source of potential voter fraud.
I imagine that we would label it so that people can have more context and read through.
How about this quote? Quote, third-party organizations, candidates, and political activists. Voter fraud is particularly possible where, quote, third-party organizations, candidates, and political party activists are involved in, quote, handling absentee ballots. Would you flag that as potentially misleading?
I don't, know the specifics of how we might enforce that, but I imagine a lot of these would have a label pointing people to a bigger conversation.
Well, you're right. You would label them because you've taken the political position right now that voter fraud doesn't exist. I would note both of those quotes come from the Carter-Baker Commission on Federal Election Reform. That is Democratic President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker. And Twitter's position is essentially voter fraud does not exist. Are you aware that just 2 weeks ago in the state of Texas, a woman was charged with 134 counts of election fraud? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that.
If I tweeted that statement with a link to the indictment, would you put a warning on it that says, well, the Democratic Party position right now is voter fraud doesn't exist?
I don't think it's useful to get into hypotheticals, but I don't believe so.
You don't believe so? Well, we're going to test that because I'm going to tweet that and we'll see what you put on it. All right. Yesterday, Mr. Dorsey, you and I spent a considerable amount of time on the phone, and you said that you wanted to embrace transparency. So I want to ask you, I have asked Twitter, I've asked Facebook multiple times, How many times have you blocked Republican candidates for office, their tweets or their posts in 2016 and 2018 and 2020? How many times have you blocked Democratic candidates for office? How many times have you blocked Republican office holders? How many times have you blocked Democratic office holders? Twitter has repeatedly refused to answer that question with specific hard data and cataloging the examples. In the interest of transparency, which you said you want to embrace, will you commit in this hearing right now to answer those questions in writing?
It's exactly what we want to do.
Question. Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dorsey, I didn't hear you.
That's exactly what we're pushing for as we think about building upon 230.
Is that a yes that you will answer those questions in writing?
Transparency, not just of outcomes, but also our process as well.
Is that a yes that you will answer those questions in writing?
We'll certainly look into it and see what we can do.
And actually answer them and not give lawyerly doublespeak about why you're not going to give specifics. Answer them. Will you commit to this committee that you will answer those questions?
We're going to work to answering broader transparency around outcomes.
All right, that's a no. Mr. Zuckerberg, how about you? Will you commit that Facebook will answer those specific questions, cataloging the number of instances in which Democrats in 16, 18, and 20 have been silenced versus the number of instances in which Republicans have been silenced on Facebook?
Senator, I'm not sure if we have that data available, but I will follow up with you or your team.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes, and I'm going to take Twitter. We'll see if it's a yes or transparency is bogus and we don't intend to provide it.
Senator Durbin.
Nice job, Ted Cruz. That was awesome. You got to press these guys and hold them accountable. Look, at the end of the day, Twitter is, they can be whatever they want, but they can't present themselves as something that they're not. And that is the problem here. That is the entire issue. They are pretending to be one thing, and they are acting as another thing. That is the issue here. They can be whatever they want, but they can't pretend to be something else so they can fall under a different set of rules. That is the issue here. Twitter is look, it's not a conversation of, or it's not a question of, is Twitter biased towards the Democrats and spreading false information that benefits the Democrats and hurts the Republicans. That's not even a question. That is a fact. For anybody that's simply paying attention to that, that's what it is. But Twitter is hiding behind this facade that they are this independent bias place that allows all opinions, but in reality they are not. They are silencing right-wing Republican opinions, and they are spreading false information for the Democrats, therefore hurting the Republicans. So they need to be labeled what they are and not pretending to be something that they're not. That is the entire issue here. So I'm glad that Ted Cruz pressed him and Zuckerberg. I have not seen the rest of it. I was actually on Parler, and someone tweeted, parlayed out the clip of Ted Cruz roasting Jack Dorsey, so I wanted to go ahead and react to that portion of the video. Fantastic. There's probably more to it. I'm sure Josh Hawley is going to go after them as well, and maybe a few other of the Republican senators. But it is a joke. It is a joke how Twitter has treated this entire situation with President Trump and how all of his tweets are being, censored and labeled. And again, it just comes down to it. If the President of the United States, if he's going to be censored, what chance does someone like me or you stand against big tech and all of this nonsense? That is the question you have to ask yourself. It's not really about Democrats and Republicans from that perspective. It's about when you have an opinion, you should not be silenced. Now, yes, there are there should be clear, definitive rules that can't really be argued. If you are threatening people with violence, if you are doxing people, and if you are trying to send people to their place of work or their home, or harassing their family members who have nothing to do with it, these are definitive rules that any logical person can look at and go, yeah, we're not going to allow that. We're not going to allow you to threaten people and harass people and dox people. Those are clear rules that almost every single normal thinking human being can agree with. But that's not what's going on here. And again, if we're going to start going down this road of silencing a political opinion, then it is just like social justice. It's an endless rabbit hole of nonsense. It will never stop, and they will eventually come for you. And that is the problem we are dealing with right now. I'm happy to be in Parler. I'm happy to be on Parler. I'm sorry I said that so fast. I'm happy to be on Parler. If you guys want to follow me over there at DDayCobra, follow Geeks and Gamers at Geeks and Gamers over there. And a lot of people are making their way over to that platform. Will it be the long-term answer? I don't know. It's the short-term answer because of everything going on with Twitter, and there's a lot of good engagement over there as well. Obviously, the UI isn't perfect, and it doesn't flow as well as Twitter. But for the lack of user interface, it is allowing everybody to have whatever opinion they want. And there seems to be a pretty high engagement rate over there. So I'll see you guys over there. I'm going to check out the rest of this hearing. And if there's more information to share, I will be happy to do that with all of you. Have a great day. Thank you very much for checking out this video. Thank you for subscribing. Like the video, comment below, and we will talk to you later.